The air in the university's ceremonial hall smelled of lilies and expensive champagne, the kind of moment that was supposed to mark the beginning of everything we had promised each other. I was beaming, my eyes searching frantically through the crowd for him. Theo, my husband, the man I had sacrificed 5 years of my life for, the man I had liquidated my entire inheritance to support, the man I had worked 3 simultaneous jobs to keep in medical school while maintaining my own career aspirations on hold. He was a doctor now. We were supposed to be free. When I finally spotted him, he was rushing toward me, but his expression was different than I had ever seen it. Cold, calculating. He pulled me into a secluded alcove near a gaudy champagne fountain, away from the celebrating families and faculty. He was holding an expensive envelope, the kind that comes from high-powered law firms. His eyes, the ones I used to drown in during late-night study sessions, were utterly dead. "I need you to sign these immediately, Charlotte," he said, his voice clinical and detached. "It's the divorce petition I filed last week." He didn't look at my face. He looked past me, already mentally calculating the financial mechanics of his escape. "You served your purpose," he continued, his tone so matter-of-fact that I had to ask him to repeat it. "I've met someone new, someone who understands my future. Autumn is the chief surgeon's daughter. Her family has connections I need. I'm going to need a fresh start, and you are no longer part of the plan." My body went numb. The betrayal was so precise, so calculated, so perfectly timed to strike at the moment of my greatest vulnerability, when I was proud of him, when I was celebrating his achievement, when I was about to tell him I was finally ready to start our family. I couldn't breathe. I am Charlotte Bell, 34 years old. I had been a forensic science student myself, with genuine dreams of working for the State Bureau investigating crime scenes, developing investigative expertise, building a career that meant something. But I deferred everything. When Theo was accepted to medical school 6 years ago, the acceptance letter arrived the same week my brother Marcus was diagnosed with severe autism spectrum disorder. Marcus was only 18. My parents were aging. The medical expenses were astronomical. My parents' savings disappeared within months. Theo sat across from me in our small apartment and held my hand. He looked into my eyes with such genuine love, such apparent sincerity. "Charlotte," he said, "I know this is hard, but what if we looked at this differently? What if I went to medical school now, and we combined our financial resources? You could work while I study. Then, when I'm a doctor, we could take care of Marcus together. We could give him the best care, the best specialists, the best life. Isn't that worth it?" It sounded like partnership. It sounded like love. It was the most calculated manipulation I had ever encountered. I liquidated my entire inheritance, $150,000 that had been held in trust for my future. Money that had been designated specifically for my brother's care. Money that was supposed to secure his future. I took it out of the trust early, paying penalties, and handed it to Theo for medical school. Then I got to work. I took a job as a waitress at an upscale restaurant, 6 nights a week. The tips were decent, and the schedule meant I could take other work during the day. I started cleaning office buildings at 5 a.m. before work, making $200 a night. I tutored high school students in chemistry and forensic science 3 afternoons a week. I was making approximately $4,500 a month gross, and it was never quite enough. Every semester, Theo needed more. The tuition had increased. He needed better housing so he could focus on his studies. He needed a car for clinicals. He needed conference fees and licensing exam prep courses. I signed up for student loans, $300,000 in federal loans, all in my name. Theo had suggested it was better that way. His future as a doctor meant his credit score needed to stay pristine for mortgage applications later. I believed him. I worked 3 jobs for 5 years. I saw my brother twice a month, always exhausted. I saw my parents deteriorate as they worried about Marcus's future. I barely saw Theo except for brief moments where he would hold me and whisper promises. I will pay you back tenfold, Charlotte. We will have the most incredible life. Just trust me. This is temporary. Your sacrifice is not going unnoticed. He was rehearsing. I understand that now. After he handed me the divorce papers in that alcove, I couldn't move for an hour. I sat on the curb outside the university hall, still wearing my nice dress, watching graduation attendees smile and pose for photographs. A security guard finally asked if I needed help. I told him I was fine. I was lying. I drove home in a fog. The beautiful house Theo had insisted we buy, felt like a prison. He had convinced me that for tax purposes, it was better to have the house in his name alone since his future income as a doctor would be substantially higher. He had been the only one to sign the mortgage. I had been a stay-at-home spouse on weekends, cleaning, cooking, managing the household finances that came directly from his medical school stipends. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried for 4 hours. Then I got angry. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger. The cold, crystalline kind that comes when you finally see the entire picture clearly. The kind of anger that makes you capable of extraordinary things. I spent the next 72 hours awake, going through every single document in the house. Bank statements, loan documents, tax returns, investment accounts, emails, anything that showed the financial history of our relationship. That was when I found the promissory notes. My father, who had been an accountant for 40 years before he retired, had insisted on protecting me. When Theo and I got married, my father had drafted formal, notarized promissory notes detailing every single expense I had paid for Theo's medical education. Year 1, $52,000 tuition, housing, books. Year 2, $58,000 increased tuition, licensing, exam prep. Year 3, $64,000 additional housing, clinical fees. Year 4, $73,000 residency application fees, test prep. Year 5, $53,000 final tuition, graduation fees. Total, $300,000. These were not gifts. These were clearly documented loans, with interest calculated at 6% annually. They were witnessed by a notary public and a family friend. They explicitly stated, payment due in full upon Dr. Theo Morrison's successful completion of medical school and securing of medical licensure. Theo had signed every single one of them. He had dismissed them as cute insurance papers for my paranoid father, signing with the arrogance of someone who believed he would never need to honor them. My father had died 2 years ago, but he had left me a handwritten note attached to the originals. Charlotte, I never trusted him. Keep these safe. You'll need them. I held those documents in my hands and felt the first spark of hope. I called a family law attorney the next morning. Ms. Vivian Vance ran a boutique firm that specialized in high-conflict divorces and financial disputes. Her office was immaculate, expensive, and intimidating. She was a woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair and the presence of someone who had won every battle she had ever fought. I didn't cry in her office. I didn't beg or plead. I simply opened my carefully organized financial binder and presented her with the meticulous documentation of 5 years of sacrifice. When I showed her the promissory notes, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Charlotte," she said slowly, "Theo thinks he's walking away with a clean slate, a medical license, and a wealthy new girlfriend. We're going to teach him that documents he signed with his own hand have consequences. Can we win?" I asked. "Charlotte," she said, "these promissory notes are notarized, witnessed, and specific. They're not ambiguous. Unless Theo can prove you forced him to sign them or that he paid the money back, which he clearly hasn't, he owes you the full amount. The only question is whether we include interest or just the principal." I took a breath. I want him to understand what he did. Ms. Vance nodded. "Then we're going to make this expensive for him." Theo called me the very next day. His voice was impatient, irritated, like he was talking to a difficult customer service representative rather than the woman he had married. "Did you sign the papers, Charlotte?" he asked. "My lawyer says we need to move this along quickly. The sooner we finalize this, the sooner you can move on with your life." He paused, then added with calculated generosity, "I'll give you $10,000 if you sign immediately and drop any claim to spousal support. That should help you get started somewhere new." $10,000 for 5 years of sacrifice, for $300,000 in debt, for everything. I had prepared for this moment with Ms. Vance. I kept my voice small and weak, exactly as he expected me to be. "I just need to find a new place, Theo," I whispered. "I'll be quiet. I promise. I won't make this difficult." I was leading him into a false sense of security. I was letting him believe that I was exactly who he had always thought I was, a woman too afraid, too weak, too dependent to fight back. He seemed relieved. "Good. That's good, Charlotte. I knew you'd be reasonable. My lawyer will be in touch." After he hung up, I sat with the phone in my hand and made a decision that would change everything. I was going to burn this down. While compiling the account statements and financial records, I made a devastating discovery that changed the entire landscape of what I was fighting. Theo had been texting Autumn extensively, late-night messages that went far beyond romantic interest. They were discussing a research project, a surgical research paper that Autumn was publishing, a paper that was supposed to be her pathway to a prestigious fellowship. But the research wasn't Autumn's. It was a patient-based study that required access to confidential medical records, HIPAA-protected information. Theo had been accessing patient files from his clinical rotations and sharing the de-identified data with Autumn so she could publish findings under her name. This was research misconduct. This was patient privacy violation. This was grounds for losing his medical license before he even officially started. I understood in that moment that Theo's betrayal went beyond me. He was willing to violate patient confidentiality, to betray the people he was supposed to help, to advance his career and impress Autumn's family. I sat down and composed a very careful email to the state medical board's compliance officer. The compliance officer's name was Dr. Raymond Chin. I sent the email from an anonymous account, describing a hypothetical scenario. A newly graduated physician who had accessed patient records from clinical rotations and shared de-identified but traceable data with a colleague to support a research publication. I did not mention Theo's name. I did not mention the hospital. I simply described the situation with enough specificity that Dr. Chen would understand the severity of the issue. I attached redacted screenshots of the text messages, redacted enough that nothing was personally identifiable, but clear enough that the pattern of misconduct was obvious. Within 2 hours, Dr. Chen responded to my anonymous email. "If these allegations are accurate, this constitutes a serious breach of medical ethics and federal HIPAA regulations. We will be launching a formal investigation." I had just set in motion an investigation that would eventually destroy Theo's career. But I wasn't done yet. 3 weeks later, Theo started bringing Autumn to the house to collect his things. I stood silently in the kitchen as they laughed and planned their luxurious future together. They didn't even acknowledge my presence. I was invisible, a piece of furniture they had already decided to discard. Autumn was beautiful in the way that money makes beautiful. Expensive clothes, professional styling, the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. She moved through my kitchen like she already owned it. "Once we sell this house, we're buying that penthouse downtown," she said to Theo. "The one with the rooftop garden. My father is already reviewing the property." Theo pulled her close. "With your connections and my medical credentials, there's nothing we can't do. We're going to have everything." I watched them from the corner of the kitchen, and I felt something harden inside me. Not just sadness, not just betrayal, but a cold, focused clarity about what needed to happen. One evening, as they were upstairs, I saw Theo's work laptop open on the dining room table. He had been in a rush and forgotten to lock it. I opened the file directory and found it, a folder labeled Research. Inside were dozens of files containing patient demographic data, clinical notes, surgical outcomes, imaging results, all carefully compiled for Autumn's research paper. There were emails between Theo and the hospital's research coordinator, emails that showed Theo had been using his clinical access codes to retrieve files that were far beyond the scope of his assigned rotations. This was not careless. This was systematic. I photographed every single page. I used my phone to document the metadata on each file, the timestamps, the access patterns. I took screenshots of the email chains. I created a complete photographic record of the evidence. Then I called Ms. Vance. I found more, I said quietly. Additional evidence of research misconduct. It's serious, Ms. Vance. This could end his career before it even starts. She was silent for a moment. Charlotte, how did you obtain this evidence? I photographed it from his work laptop, which he left on the dining room table in the house, I said. The files are his. The emails are his. But I want to make sure we're not breaking any laws by using them. Ms. Vance took a breath. We need to consult with a healthcare compliance attorney before we use this evidence in litigation. If it came from his work laptop, there could be HIPAA implications for us as well. But I have a colleague who specializes in this. Don't share the evidence with anyone else. Let me handle this. Within 48 hours, Ms. Vance's healthcare compliance colleague had reviewed the evidence and provided us with a legal pathway. We could turn the evidence over to the state medical board as whistleblowers, which would protect us legally while ensuring the investigation moved forward. I filed a formal complaint with the state medical board, attaching the documented evidence of Theo's HIPAA violations. By this time, Theo had no idea that his entire career was collapsing. I moved out of the house and into a small rental apartment across the city. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom in a modest neighborhood, but it was mine. For the first time in 5 years, I lived somewhere that wasn't a debt or an obligation. It was a place I was renting week to week with money I was earning from my new job, because I had gotten a job through a legal aid clinic that Ms. Vance recommended. I had found employment as a forensic science technician with the district attorney's office. The salary wasn't much, $38,000 a year, but it was honest work and it was mine. The clinic had provided free consultations, which meant I could start my legal case without the astronomical attorney fees I had feared. Ms. Vance had agreed to take my case on a contingency basis, which meant she would be paid from the settlement I won, not from money I didn't have. She understood the situation. I had been financially devastated by supporting Theo, and now I was fighting to recover. You're not my only client like this, she had told me. I see this pattern over and over. Women who sacrifice everything for men's education and careers, only to be discarded when they're no longer useful. We're going to make Theo Morrison an example of what happens when you betray someone's trust. I served Theo with the official lawsuit for breach of contract, repayment of personal loan. The document was notarized and professional. It demanded the immediate repayment of $300,000 in principal, plus accumulated interest at 6% annually, for a total of approximately $378,000. It referenced the promissory notes in detail, included copies of his signatures, and cited the specific terms he had agreed to. Theo called me within an hour. His voice was no longer smooth and controlled. It was shaking. Charlotte, this is insane. This is marital debt. This is blackmail. You can't do this. His voice kept climbing in pitch. My lawyer says this is financial extortion. You can't claim this after we're divorced. I used the script Ms. Vance had prepared for me. Theo read the contract you signed. Read the promissory notes. They're very clear. Payment was due when you received your medical license. You've received it. Now you owe me. My attorney will be in contact with your attorney. I hung up before he could respond. The next phase of my strategy was the most delicate. 3 days after I served Theo with the lawsuit, Autumn's father, the chief surgeon, called Ms. Vance directly. He was polite but firm. He offered a substantial settlement, $100,000 if I would drop the lawsuit immediately and sign a non-disclosure agreement stating that I would never speak about Theo Morrison or his family. $100,000. To give up everything I had sacrificed for, to allow him to escape without consequences, to let him build his perfect life with Autumn. Ms. Vance declined without hesitation. "With all due respect, sir," she said, her voice cool and professional. "Your family members facing multiple legal and professional challenges at the moment. I would advise Dr. Morrison to focus his energy on those matters rather than attempting financial settlements that could be interpreted as admission of guilt." After she hung up, she called me immediately. "He doesn't know about the medical board investigation," she said. "That's good. That means Theo hasn't told them. They think this is just about the loans. When they find out what's really happening, they'll abandon him immediately. You just have to be patient." The discovery phase of the lawsuit was brutal for Theo. Ms. Vance filed a formal discovery request, which meant Theo's attorney was legally obligated to provide copies of every financial document, bank statement, and communication related to his finances during the marriage. That was when everything broke open. Theo had an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, created 2 years into our marriage. For 5 years, while I was working 3 jobs, he had been quietly moving money into an account I didn't know about. During the discovery process, he had to disclose it. The account contained $420,000, money that had come from his medical school stipends, which I had helped secure, money that should have been part of our marital assets, money that he had been hiding and accumulating while asking me to cover household expenses and student loan payments. Ms. Vance immediately filed a motion to freeze all his accounts and seize the offshore funds as part of the discovery process. Theo was panicking now. He couldn't access his money. He couldn't pay the high-powered attorney he thought he deserved. His leverage was gone. Then came the moment that destroyed him completely. Theo showed up at my apartment unannounced one evening. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, desperate. His perfect exterior had completely cracked. He cried. Actual tears ran down his face as he begged me to drop the lawsuit. "Please, Charlotte," he whispered, leaning against my doorframe. "I still love you. Autumn was just a mistake. A stupid mistake. Please, we can work this out. I'll pay you back slowly. I'll divorce Autumn. We can start over. We can have the family we talked about. Please." He was trying to use the same manipulation that had controlled me for 5 years. The same fake tears. The same false promises. But I was no longer the woman he had known. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw him clearly. Not as the brilliant future doctor I had sacrificed for. Not as the love of my life, but as a man who had calculated exactly how much he could take from me and had never for one moment felt genuine love. "Your mistake, Theo," I said quietly, "is thinking my intelligence is as easily replaced as my savings." I closed the door and locked it. He sat outside my apartment for 30 minutes, crying and pleading. I didn't answer. I called the police and reported him for trespassing. The officers were very sympathetic. They gave him a warning and told him if he returned, he would be arrested. 4 days later, I received official notification that the state medical board had launched a formal investigation into Theo Morrison for serious ethical violations and potential HIPAA breaches during his clinical training. The letter was long and detailed. It outlined the allegations. It informed him that his medical board license was being placed on provisional status pending investigation. He could not practice medicine during the investigation. His residency was effectively on hold. I had ensured that letter would arrive via certified mail to his attorney's office, so there would be no way for him to claim he hadn't received it. The divorce hearing arrived on a cold Tuesday morning in March. Theo looked like a shadow of himself. He had lost weight. His designer suit hung loose on his frame. He sat across from me in the courtroom with his attorney, expensive lawyer named Benjamin Cross, who had been hired by Autumn's father and was now being paid from Theo's frozen accounts, which meant his representation was running out of funds. Theo's attorney tried to argue that the promissory notes were part of the marital property dispute, which meant the loans should be treated as gifts or marital debt that should be split equally in the divorce. Ms. Vance stood up and demolished that argument in less than 5 minutes. She presented the original, notarized promissory notes. She showed the witness signatures. She demonstrated that these documents had been signed prior to the marriage, that they were explicit contractual agreements, and that they explicitly stated payment due upon successful completion of medical school and securing of medical licensure. She presented financial documentation showing that Theo had, in fact, completed medical school. He had secured his medical license. The condition for repayment had been satisfied. He was now legally obligated to repay. The judge, an older woman named Justice Morrison, no relation, reviewed the documents carefully. "These promissory notes are clear," she said, her voice carrying no sympathy. "They are notarized. They are witnessed. They are not ambiguous. The defendant is liable for the full amount plus accumulated interest. This will be ordered as part of the divorce judgment." She ordered Theo to repay the $378,000, the original $300,000 plus interest, within 18 months. The courtroom fell silent, and then something happened that I had been waiting for. During the court proceeding, a woman in a gray blazer walked in carrying a manila folder. She was Dr. Ellen Foster, a representative from the State Medical Board. She walked directly to the judge and handed her the formal findings of the investigation. The judge reviewed the document, her expression growing increasingly stern. Then she looked directly at Theo. "Dr. Morrison," she said, her voice cold, "I have just received official notification that the State Medical Board has voted to revoke your medical license, effective immediately. The grounds are serious violations of medical ethics, HIPAA violations, and research misconduct. You are hereby directed to cease all medical practice immediately. You have the right to appeal this decision within 30 days. This court session is adjourned." The gavel came down. Theo's face went completely white. He didn't move. He seemed unable to process what had just happened. In the span of 60 seconds, he had lost his marriage, been ordered to repay $378,000 he didn't have access to, and been stripped of his medical license. His attorney stood up, looking bewildered and professionally devastated. Autumn's father, who had been sitting in the gallery, immediately got up and left without looking back. Within the week, I would learn that Autumn had filed for divorce from Theo as well, citing fraudulent misrepresentation of professional credentials. She had married a doctor. She had woken up to a man with a revoked license and massive debt. The civil judgment was enforced over the following months. Theo was forced to liquidate the assets he had access to. The offshore account was seized and applied to the judgment. He was forced to sell his car, his furniture, his electronics. His attorney negotiated a payment plan for the remainder of the debt. The house, the beautiful house that he had insisted be in his name alone, was sold, and the proceeds were applied directly to the judgment against him. I received the final payment of $378,000 approximately 14 months after the divorce hearing was finalized. I paid off my $300,000 in student loans immediately. The remaining $78,000 went directly to a special needs trust for my brother Marcus. With the burden of debt finally lifted, I could breathe. I returned to school, completing my master's degree in forensic science at night while working full-time with the district attorney's office. My case, the documentation of Theo's research misconduct and HIPAA violations, became a teaching case study in medical ethics courses at 3 different universities. My experience tracking financial crimes, analyzing evidence, and building legal cases made me exceptionally skilled at my job. Within 3 years, I was promoted to senior forensic analyst. Within 5 years, I was leading a specialized unit focused on white-collar financial crimes. I had turned my pain into expertise. I had transformed my sacrifices into knowledge that helped other people. I saw Theo once, exactly 7 years after the divorce hearing was finalized. I was walking out of a coffee shop in downtown, and he was sitting at an outdoor table with a newspaper. He looked completely different. Not physically broken, but diminished somehow. Smaller. The arrogance that had defined him was completely gone. He didn't see me. I watched him for a moment, and I realized I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just a quiet understanding that he had been the architect of his own destruction. I stood in my apartment one evening, looking out at the city skyline. I had purchased this apartment outright. No mortgage, no debt, no financial entanglement with another person. It was mine. Completely, unambiguously mine. I was debt-free. My brother's medical care was secure through the trust fund I had established. My career was thriving. I had earned a reputation as an expert investigator. I had built a life that was entirely my own. The woman who had sacrificed everything for a man who saw her as nothing had become someone whom others respected, trusted, and valued. The memory of Theo's cold eyes in that alcove at his graduation ceremony was no longer painful. It was simply a reminder of how close I had come to disappearing entirely. But I had fought back, not with cruelty, not with vengeance, but with evidence, with legal strategy, and with the quiet determination to ensure that my sacrifices were not rewarded with erasure. I had walked away from a man who valued me only for my usefulness, and I had built a life where my value came entirely from within. If you've made it this far, you understand. Respect is non-negotiable. My worth wasn't defined by Theo's cruel words or the $300,000 debt he saddled me with. My story proves that silence can be a weapon, and patience, the patience to document every promissory note and HIPAA violation, can be the ultimate power. If this resonated with you, if a partner has gaslit you into professional invisibility and financial ruin, tell yourself this: your silence doesn't make you weak. Your boundaries don't make you difficult. Your survival makes you extraordinary. Never let a predator turn your love into their personal line of credit. The revolution happens when you decide to write your own ending. He called me a waitress. I became the forensic analyst who ensured his medical license was revoked. Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.